We are live with today's Core 2 A+ study group. There we are. Looks like things are working as expected. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching us on the replay, we will be getting started in approximately 10 minutes. 9 minutes and 50 seconds. 9 minutes and 10 seconds. If I could count, I'd be able to tell you exactly how long that would be. Apparently, I am incapable of such mathematics today. Maybe every day. That might be a normal thing. We'll have to find out. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm just getting things together, checking my cameras. Are we recording? This time we are. We've got streaming that looks very good. My cache number went up to 4% there for a moment. I have had, I wouldn't say sketchy internet. I would say that uncharacteristically intermittent is the situation over the last couple of days. We made it through Tuesday okay. So maybe we'll make it through Thursday. Okay, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how things go today with getting all of this together. You know, one of the things that I can always plan for is being here and setting up the systems, but I can't plan for the internet. I can have a backup, and I do have a backup now for the internet, but we'll see how that goes. In fact, I need to check my capacity on that. I'm wondering now if it flips over if I'm out of bandwidth. My backup line I pay by the bandwidth, so it's a 5G connection, and then it just sits there until I need it. But I've needed it a couple of times most recently, so I think I need to up my number of available megabytes to something legitimate. So that's sort of how it works. We've got quite a bit to go through today. It's all brand new questions, of course. So get your Core 2 A+ hat on your head. Make yourself comfortable. We will get to the rest of this in just a moment. We've got a lot to get through today. Of course, you can put your pin in our digital pin cushion. That's what you see in front of me here. See if I can show you what that looks like. Looks like that, everybody. So wherever you are in the world, you can put your pin in the map. We can see where you happen to be. A lot of folks checking in from all over. We got dots on the screen from North America. We got folks checking in from Europe, from Africa. So thanks for being here, everyone. We'll get started in about 7 minutes and get things going. Hope everybody is doing well. We are well here. Thank you, Minneapolis. We are doing well, thank you. Everything's going well. Germany is here. Guten Tag for all of my friends in Germany. We've got a lot to go through. Of course, with the last name like Messer, I am somewhat connected to that section of Europe somehow, somewhere. Not sure how, not sure where. I just go with the name. Could be the way it works. Well. There is, it's been busy here. Obviously, for those of you aware, the new Security Plus exam comes out later this year, the end of the year. And of course, the current one will still be around until May or so. But obviously, there's a lot of content creation going on right now. So I'm very, very much in that mode of creating content, trying to make everything work. And a lot of good stuff in the new Security Plus. Not a dramatic change, but 40% of the content is new, maybe a little bit more. I think we lose 40% and we gain 40%. It's not exactly the same 40%, but that's the mix. They got rid of a lot, they put in a lot, but at the end, it's about the same size. It's a little bit bigger, just a little bit, just a tad bit. Not enough to, I guess, make much of a difference. But a little bit bigger is more things. It's like 8 videos longer. We'll put it that way. I count things by number of videos. It's 8 videos longer, I think is the number I came up with. Those might change, though. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what's up. All right, 5-minute warning. Look at that. Look at that. That means my emails just went out. That means my X messages just went out. My Facebooks just went out, and et cetera, et cetera. We'll do all of that. So get a drink, get a nice comfortable place to watch. We will go through all of this. There is Probably move this so I can see a little bit better. I don't want to move too many things around before we just get started on this. We'll have to see. I've got a lot that's ready. I think we're in pretty good shape. I think we're ready to go. I like it when things come together. Although I did set up a little bit earlier than I did on Tuesday. 2 days ago, we did our live stream for the Core 1. This is the live stream for the Core 2. And when I was setting up on Tuesday, I kind of waited too long. I generally warm this place up, start turning things on, powering up these systems about 2 hours before start time. So that way I know if there's any significant problems right then. But that gives me 2 hours to get things fixed, which normally would be just fine. And most of the time, everything's working fine. There's never a problem. But occasionally, every once in a while, these systems that we develop that are digital, that we provide a fixed input, have them calculate that fixed input to give us a fixed output every single time. It's a computer. It works that way every single time. Why is it when I boot, not every single time is it the same? There's every once in a while, something goes a little out there. It goes astray. It goes wide left or wide right. And then I'm left with sort of figuring out what just happened there. And then even crazier, my default response, because this is the universal answer, which is, well, let's reboot it again, see what happens. And we reboot it again, and it's fine. That's fine. Usually that's the way it goes down. Unless there has been some type of failure, we just reboot and everything's fine. So didn't have that today, though. Today we were okay. I power on, everything's working. We are in the mode, though, that every day I'm shooting in here. So when we're not live, that day I'm shooting other video for a training class. So right now, I didn't even move my monitors from yesterday. Normally these monitors are much closer. They're moved over. I have to adjust things in here, but that's just the way it goes. Didn't have to touch anything. I will be moving things back, though, this afternoon. And then tomorrow, the plan is to shoot more video, and then that would be Friday. And then Saturday, I think Saturday I need to prep for the live stream on Wednesday of next week. And then you've got, I think, probably when you're working through, maybe Sunday I'll shoot some more. But somewhere in there, of course, I have to edit to be able to do that. So you never know. You never know, you never know, you never know. Would it make sense to have an assistant run my AV equipment so I can focus on presenting? Oh, I will disappoint you, and just the presenting's the easy part. That's the simple part. Getting things set up is the hard part. So I have to be here for the hard part. And we'll have to make that happen. And Spy in the chat room, please lower your bit rate. YouTube punishes us for not having premium, and we get constant lag/buffering that has already started again. Thank you. That's not how YouTube works. So, and that's not how the buffering and the the bit rates work either. I send YouTube a single stream of video, which you do not see. YouTube takes that stream, they repackage it, they re-render it into a number of different formats. 1080p, 720, 480, you get the idea. 360, 240. So they give you all of those different options whenever you click on the cog, because they are working on that piece of it. They are doing, so you're getting a stream from YouTube. You are not getting a stream from me. And as you can see in my cache here, we have a constant flat line. That is everything that I'm sending to YouTube is getting there. We aren't having to buffer anything. Everything is getting to YouTube in one piece. Between you and YouTube, though, that's up to you guys. That's up to you folks to figure out why something works or does not work, because I have no control over that piece of it. And if you are getting buffering, maybe somewhere along the line is congestion on your particular network. So I would recommend hitting the cog wheel and bringing that cog wheel down and choosing a lower resolution, because I can't control that part. I am sending 1080p, though, which is not 4K. I'm sending 1080p because that gives me the fastest response time. Look, it's 12 noon. All this talk of resolutions and bit rates, I could talk forever about all of that. We're not going to. I promise you, it's time to get started on the live stream, everybody. Why don't we prepare right now? Look, I'm doing things. Let's do a live stream. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2026 Professor Messer A+ Core 2 study group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And if you know your material, you know your stuff, then you'll probably do just fine at figuring out the answers to these questions. But there's only one way to find out, and that one way to find out is for you to follow along with the questions that we have for you today. Well, what do you mean follow along? What does that mean exactly? Oh, I'm so glad you asked, because I happen to have information for you that can tell you all about the follow along process. What you want to do is pop open a new browser window, head over to the link you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and you will be able to answer those, or at least see the questions that come up and hopefully answer them as well. We're going to find out if that works in just a moment. I've also put that same Vevox front end on the professormesser.com/live page. So if you're on my website watching this live, you can simply scroll down the page and it's right there. You don't even have to open up another browser window, which makes things a little bit easier anyway. Let's see if you know some of the information that we are looking for in what we call our rewind question. This is our first question of the study group. This is a question, I believe it's from last month's study group. So we get to see if you maybe remember some of the things that are there, but it's really there so that you can answer questions in that Vevox front end and see how it works. Before I go into the question, let me remind everyone of our standing rule for the study group. That is, please, no answers in the chat room. No answers in the chat room. And please, no answers in the chat room. Let's look at the question that we have for you today. The question asks, the marketing department manager is using their budget to pay for a custom software module on the company's CRM. Which specific role does the manager occupy in the context of the change management process? Is the manager a business customer, a technical lead, a sponsor, a change board member, or an IT team member? Now, if you think you know the answer, use this link, professormesser.com/QA, to answer this question, lock in your answer. We're going to come back to this in just a moment and see what you think the right answer should be. In the meantime, let me welcome you officially to this crazy live stream that we do every month for Core 2. We do one for Core 1 and Core 2, so there's 2 live streams there. We have a live stream next week for Network Plus, a live stream the week after that for Security Plus. So there's always something going on. Of course, we do announce these and provide information on these live streams on the YouTube, on the social media, and other places. And to find them, it's easy. You type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find us. professormesser.com/YouTube takes you right to our YouTube channel. professormesser.com/X takes you right to your X account and shows our X posts. Usually that's our daily pop quiz questions. We also have professormesser.com/LinkedIn/Instagram/Facebook. You get the idea. One of those will work for you. That is one that hopefully you are familiar with. Maybe you're on some of those sites. And if we're not on your favorite social media site, let me know. I should probably get an account made on that one as well. Always trying to make that happen. Don't forget that somewhere in this first hour, we will be giving you a continuing education unit credit. I will explain sometime in this first hour the process you can follow to receive an email from me that provides you with a 1-hour webinar category continuing education unit, or CEU. That is just something you have to listen for. You never know when it's going to happen. It's a surprise for all of us. So listen in. Hopefully I won't forget. That's even more of a surprise when I don't actually give you one. So I'll make sure we get to that at some point today. Our questions today come directly from the CompTIA A+ exam objectives for the 220-1202 exam. This is also called the version 15 exam. Why? I don't know. That's what they call it. So we're going with that. This pair of exams was released on March the 25th of 2025. The estimated retirement is in September of 2028. So as we sit here in September of 2026, you have 2 years to study. So that question I tend to get, which is, how much time do I have before this goes away? 2 years. You got plenty of time. Got tons of time. So you are in good shape if you're studying from materials that are marked as the 220-1201 or the 220-1202. The exams themselves, you have to pass both exams. They're 90 minutes each. You get a maximum of 90 questions on each exam. For the Core 1 exam, you only needed to score 675 on a scale between 100 and 900. But on the Core 2 exam, you need to do a little bit better. You need to do a 700 on that same scale between 100 and 900. And once you pass both of those exams, you are A+ certified for 3 years with some very easy ways, relatively easy ways to renew that certification as long as you would like. You never have to take these exams again, thankfully. There's plenty of great ways to renew that certification. If you'd like to know more about that, you can always ask a question about it. I will be taking questions from you in the second hour. So again, that same link that you went to, professormesser.com/QA, is a great link to go to. Right at the top of the screen, you can flip over and ask a question for the second hour. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have about the certifications, about technology, about whatever interests you. About the weather, we can always talk about the weather. It's gripping. It's exciting. You'll love it. Today, we're going to talk specifically about the 220-1202 exam, the Core 2 exam. So our questions today will be focused on operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, operational procedures, and potpourri. We'll certainly go through a lot of different topics today. I'll try to touch all of those different categories. So hopefully that will be something that works well for what you are doing. Also, keep in mind that I have a video replay of this immediately available afterwards on the YouTube. But if you prefer something that's more mobile, maybe something audio only, so you can listen in the car, you can listen when you're working out, you can find that as a podcast. We distribute it in an audio podcast format. If you'd like to add that to your favorite podcast listening program, simply point that app over to professormesser.com/podcast. If you are listening to your favorite podcast on a streaming media service, then we're probably already there. For example, if you're on Spotify, just search for Professor Messer on Spotify. Look where I am. So you can fit me right into your other playlists. You have the chill playlist, you have the getting ready to go out playlist, and then you have the Professor Messer playlist, which I think fits all of those. You can listen to me before you go out. You can listen to me if you're chilling. You'll be able to figure out the details. ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. About a day after we finish here, my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this in the replay, hi, Lori, she is going through and documenting exactly what we're doing and putting timestamps on the YouTube video description. This allows you to click a few things and go directly to where you would like to go in this video. You can find things very, very, very easily to make that happen. Find out more about that. Go over to our YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube, and you'll see those YouTube video descriptions all there. Thanks to Lori. If that's something you like and if you've used and something that might help you as you go through your studies, click that heart in the chat. Let Lori know that you appreciate her hard work with that as well. I sure appreciate your hard work, Lori. Thank you. Let's now keep this moving. I want to get back to that question real quick. Before we do, let me remind you that when we are not here on a live stream, we're over on our Discord where thousands of people are studying for their A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus exams, and maybe even other certifications as well. There are some really nice folks there, really smart people in that Discord, people that are willing to help you with your studies. Be really useful to be able to go through and understand exactly the types of things that are most important that you would like to work through. So see how that works for you. Head over to Discord, professormesser.com/Discord. I think that might help you quite a bit with your studies. Also, at some point, you will need to take your exam. And if you happen to be in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory, you can take that exam for less money. All discounted vouchers are available at my website. These are exactly the same vouchers on the CompTIA website, but they are available to you at a discount. You don't need a special code. You don't need to load any special extensions into a browser. They're just discounted. What could be easier? You can find out about that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only do you get a voucher for less money, I give you things you can't get anywhere else. You purchase a voucher on my site, you get a copy of my exclusive Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook I do not sell separately. You cannot get this individually unless you purchase a voucher or you purchase a success bundle at the Professor Messer website. So enjoy that. That's a series of tips and tricks I've created for not only the study process, but I also include some strategies that I have used during the CompTIA exams that I think got me a few extra points. Maybe it'll get you a few extra points as well. You can find out about our vouchers at professormesser.com/vouchers. It's also a great way to support what we do on our website. Thank you so much. If you purchased a voucher on our site before, we really do appreciate your support. Let's keep going with the question I asked earlier, which was, the marketing department manager is using their budget to pay for a custom software module on the company's customer relationship management software, CRM. Which specific role does this manager occupy in the context of the change management process? Is this person a business customer, a technical lead, a sponsor, a change board member, or someone on the IT team? Well, let's see how you did with this one. I'm going to close this poll, and we have a bit of a rainbow, which is sometimes interesting. Sometimes it's a little telling. This one is actually quite good. I think we did better this month than we did last, because 45% of you say it's a sponsor, 19% say it is a business customer, 17% said change board menu, a change board menu, and then 12% said technical lead. Only down to single digits for the last answer, which is IT team, but still kind of in the upper level. Almost made 10%, almost hit double digits with that one. So what would the answer be then? If 45% said sponsor, should we just go with that, or would it be something else? Well, to do that, we would first have to understand the context of this as it fits into the change control process. And there are many different parts of the organization that participate. It's not just about IT. It's about other people in the organization as well. IT certainly is doing the change, so they will be involved almost always with the change control process. There's also a business customer who is probably the department or the group that uses that software. IT generally is not the folks that are actually performing the use of that app. Maybe it's an accounting app. Therefore, your business customer would be the accounting department. Maybe it's a shipping and receiving app, so the folks in shipping would be your business customer. You can think of them that way. And of course, you need to think about who's paying for this. Perhaps most important, I should put that at the top. Who is paying for this software? It's not IT if it's the accounting department. It's not IT if it's shipping and receiving. They're paying for their own software, and they are requiring or hoping to get some help from IT to install and maintain that software. That's usually how it works. But if you are someone who is making the purchase, it came out of your budget, then you are the sponsor of that particular software, of that particular process. And indeed, the sponsor, the 45% of you that said sponsor, are the ones that got it absolutely right. It is the sponsor that we were looking for. Would not be your business customer. That's not exactly the one that pays for the software module. Sometimes it is, but that doesn't describe the person who is paying for it. We have 17% that said change board member. They're usually not the ones buying the software. They're just on the change control board. 12% of you said technical lead. The technical lead doesn't have a lot of money in their pocket. I can tell you that right now. And because of that, they're probably not paying for the software. And then lastly, the IT team. Again, this is software for the marketing department. Generally, the IT department would not be purchasing software from for a different department, probably wouldn't even know what to purchase, but will absolutely partner with the marketing department to buy something that fits well into the existing network, the existing infrastructure, the existing security posture, and then can implement that as well. So hopefully that gives you some perspective. I think we did pretty well on this one. 45% of you said sponsor. 45% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Well, that was our rewind question of the month. From this point forward, all new questions. In fact, the very first new question that we do in a study group is a question that is not multiple choice. And most of us are familiar with the multiple choice questions. We just did one where there was a question and then there were multiple answers that you could have chosen from. But that gives you a little bit too much of an advantage, because even in this question where there were 5 answers, if you didn't know the answer, you could have just guessed. And that guess would have gotten you at least about a 20% chance of getting that question right. Really a very specific 20% chance in that particular case. So now we get to a point where CompTIA is thinking 20% when you make a guess, that's a little bit too much. Let's make this harder. Let's really test people to see if they really know the content. And so at the very beginning of your exam, you will get a handful of questions that are not multiple choice. They are, I guess, definition of those is anything but multiple choice. CompTIA refers to these as performance-based questions. And performance-based questions can take a number of different formats. It can be fill in the blank. It can be one where you put in a command prompt. You have to type something in at that command prompt and make it work. Maybe you have to do a matching question. Maybe it's a fill in the blank. Maybe it's one where you're putting things in a particular order. Maybe it's just drag and drop. You're adding things to a chart. There's about a handful plus or minus of these that will appear at the beginning of your exam. So you should be prepared for questions that are not multiple choice. But as you can tell, that means there is an unlimited number of different question formats that could arrive on your screen when you start this exam. But that's okay, because all of the content from these performance-based questions, all of that content is information that you've already learned. They're not asking you about something that's not on the exam. They're asking you about something that is very specifically written in your official exam objectives. So I have for you today, as we do with all of our study groups, the first new question is a performance-based question. So let's do our performance-based question. We've got a number of different topics to go through on this one. We got 5 different commands that I'm looking for in this scenario. And I'm not giving you the commands on the screen. So it's kind of a fill in the blank, but it's also one that comes directly from the exam objectives. This is a scenario. You are troubleshooting an employee's Windows 11 workstation. The user reports the following problems connecting to an internal web server at 10.20.30.25. And so we have a list here of some statistics, some information about that person's machine. And then I have a series of tasks that you will probably go through to help troubleshoot this particular problem. For each of these tasks, I would like you to tell me, what command am I using to perform that task? If you know the entire command line, provide me with the entire command line. If you know just the command, just provide me with the command. We'll be pretty flexible on this one because I gave you no information at all. I'm giving you a fill in the blank to put these in. Let's step through each one of these tasks, and then you can start adding those in at the link you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. As always, please no answers in the chat room. The tasks are, the first one is, test whether the default gateway responds when addressed by IP. What command does that? What command would you type in to test whether the default gateway responds when you address it by IP? I think you can figure out now what we're looking for. The next task is query DNS for the IP address associated with portal.corp.example. That is the next one on our list. So there's also a different command. Each one of these will be different. So go through the process of knowing what that would be to query the DNS for the IP address associated with portal.corp.example. The next task to perform would be to display the routers between the workstation and 10.20.30.25. What command would you use? The best command for that one would you use to make that happen? That would be another good one to look at. Next task is measure packet loss and latency at each hop to 10.20.30.25. That one's a little bit different. That one's a little bit more detailed than the previous one. So those are 2 different answers. You need to choose the best answer for each one of those. And lastly, display active connections, listening ports, addresses, and process IDs numerically. So see if you happen to know what that task would be. Put in the command for that one and figure out the details. Those are the 5 tasks I'm looking for. I would like you to tell me what 5 commands you would use to perform those troubleshooting tasks. And you can see there's quite a bit to choose from for this question. Maybe you know some of these commands. Maybe you don't know the commands, which is a different problem in itself. Do not worry if you do not know them. You will know them in a moment. So this would be a good learning opportunity. If you do think you know what they are, submit those questions or the answer to those questions at any time at professormesser.com /QA. Might be a good one to step through to know what these commands are. And there are a number of different commands you need to know for the Core 2 exam, not just Windows commands, but also Linux commands. There are, I guess, Mac OS type commands. There's a Linux and Unix type commands and series you need to know, but there's also quite a few Windows commands you need to know as well. So you get a nice mix, I think. Here at Messer Studios, we use a lot of Linux, we use a lot of Windows, we use a lot of Mac OS. So we like having all of those running somewhere doing something, if only to allow me to see what's happening with that particular operating system. They do tend to change over time, so something to consider there as well. This might also be a good series of questions to help remind you which commands you would use. Obviously, here we're talking about troubleshooting a Windows 11 workstation, so I'm not giving too much away when I'm telling you that the commands that I am looking for are Windows commands. I think we could probably assume that based on it, but if you happen to know what a Linux command might be for a particular question, there's some extra credit for you. Maybe we'll go through these and see how some of these might be the same, some of these might be different, some of these you might have another option available as maybe an extra credit for me. We'll go through each one of these and try to figure out what the Linux version of this might be. I didn't plan for that, but when do I ever plan for a lot of things anyway? I'm human, just like a lot of folks, honest. So we'll figure out if we know what those happen to be as we step through them, and we'll try to figure out the Linux flavor for it as well. So let's go through each one of these one at a time. Maybe you've locked in your question. Maybe you know what the answers are for these. Maybe you think you know what the answers are for these. So let's step through all of these tasks and all of these commands. This would be troubleshooting an employee's Windows 11 workstation. The user reports the following problems connecting to an internal web server at 10.20.30.25. And here is the detailed statistics from that workstation. The question asks, test whether the default gateway responds when addressed by IP. So this might be an interesting one to know. We also, if you really wanted to put the entire answer down, I want to know what IP address you would use for this particular command. Give me the entire command, and if you do, it's ping with a space, and then an IP address which correlates back to the default gateway. If we look at our list of statistics up here for DHCP and IPv4 address and subnet mask, default gateway, DHCP server, and DNS servers, the default gateway is indeed 10.20.30.1. So if we wanted to see if the default gateway responds, we would use the ping command, and we would use the IP address for the default gateway, which is 10.20.30.1. There's the answer for our first task. Hopefully, we would get a response back from that default gateway. If we did not get a response back from that default gateway, then we know something is really going wrong with our connectivity. Maybe we have the wrong default gateway configured in our system, or maybe the default gateway really is having a problem. Interestingly enough, on the Linux side, Linux is the same command, same ping command, same syntax. There may be some nuanced differences between the two, but generally speaking, ping 10.20.30.1 is the same in Windows as it is in Linux. Our next task is to query DNS for the IP address associated with portal.corp.example. Well, if we're querying DNS, we're asking DNS for information, and we're in Windows, we're probably using the nslookup command, the name server lookup, DNS, the domain name services. Well, the name service lookup, and then we put the name of the fully qualified domain name of the device we'd like to get an IP address for. And in this case, that would be portal.corp.example. So the full command line is nslookup portal.corp.example. In Linux, nslookup could be an option that might be on your Linux distribution. Linux has deprecated nslookup and instead prefers that you use dig as the answer, D-I-G. Can you dig it? I bet you can. And it would be dig portal.corp.example. So the syntax very similar. The name of the command would be very different. I'll accept either one of those if we were talking about Linux, but I'll only accept nslookup if I'm talking about Windows, because although there is a dig executable out there you could install for Windows, it does not come in Windows by default. So your best option here would be nslookup portal.corp.example which every Windows machine is going to have already installed and already available. The next task we have is display the routers between the workstation and 10.20.30.25, which would be our web server. What routers exist between us and that remote device? One of the best ways to determine that would be to run a trace RT, which is an abbreviation for trace route. We would trace RT to 10.20.30.25 from that workstation. And that would give us a list of all of the hops or routers that exist all the way through from one side to the other, assuming, of course, that we do have full connectivity and assuming that all of those routers will report back that they are indeed the router handling that particular connection. So this is something that in Windows, we abbreviate this to trace RT. If you are in Linux, you would use the full command trace route, all written out. Effectively the same executable, or at least the same functionality across both executables, Windows and Linux. Obviously, the executable itself is different, but the functionality is pretty much the same, and the output looks pretty much the same between both as well. There's a number of different other options available in the Linux world, but none that are on the exam. So I think trace RT and trace route would be the best choices for doing that type of lookup. We also, on this next task, have a similar task that we want to perform, but it is different. And this one doesn't have a direct Linux version of it, if you will. The question is, or the task is, measure packet loss and latency at each hop to 10.20.30.25. If anything, this is kind of building on the last question. If we found all the routers in the last question, how could we look at packet loss to each of those routers in a more automated form? So in that case, we not only want to trace route the connection, we also want to perform some type of latency analysis. And in Windows, there's a utility that does exactly this called path ping. Path ping, and you put in the IP address of the destination that you would like to path ping. This is going to not only show us trace route information, but it will send a grouping of data, of information back and forth to each individual IP address, each hop along the way, and you get a response back that shows latency statistics. So you can see how long did it take to talk to that router. It also tells you any type of response times and tells you if there's any packet loss. So you get a lot of interesting information in that path ping. There's not a path ping direct correlation in the Linux world. There are a number of utilities that do a similar thing. I use MTR in Linux, for example, which is multi-trace route, or it stands for something, MTR, but it's kind of a full screen trace route that does a similar function to path ping. Not quite the same, a little bit different in how it operates, but the information that it provides is very similar. It can constantly monitor and show you response time and packet loss information on a per hop basis multiple times a second if you would like to. So if you were you'd have to find that utility. It is not something that's commonly included in a Linux distribution, but you could probably automatically install it using the package installation tools available on your Linux distribution. That utility, again, is MTR, Mike Tango Romeo. And the last task that we would like to do is display active connections, listening ports, addresses, and process IDs numerically. Whew, that's a lot to view numerically, and it is a lot. This utility is sort of a Swiss Army knife of statistics. If you're looking for a metric, this utility has a lot of those for you and a lot of different ways to view those metrics. That is the netstat command. I simply just put netstat on the screen here because netstat has, I don't know, 1 million different options available for it. I'm summarizing, of course. It's probably more like 2 million, but it's a lot. There's a lot of different command line prompts and things. Of all of these commands, the one that I am looking at documentation for the most all the time is netstat. That's the one where I'm always going back, man, netstat, because I'm in Linux, or I'm looking at netstat / if I'm in the Windows world. But that's certainly one that might help as well. If you are ever trying to get a breakdown of this, well, that can certainly tell you. Netstat is the one that can provide that for you. Netstat is the same command and effectively the same functionality in Windows as it is in Linux. Well, those are our 5 tasks. Hopefully you were able to do your troubleshooting. You remembered these commands and were able to put those in. Testing whether the default gateway responds when addressed by IP is a ping command to 10.20.30.1. If you wanted to query the DNS server for the IP address associated with a fully qualified domain name, you would use the nslookup command with the name, that fully qualified domain name right there, and it will respond back with an IP address if one is available. We also have displaying the routers between the workstation and 10.20.30.25 is the traceRT command, or in Linux it would be traceroute, and we put the IP address of the device that we would like to trace to. Measuring packet loss and latency at each hop to 10.20.30.25 would be the Windows path ping command, path ping all one word, and then displaying active connections, listening ports, addresses, and process IDs. That is an all-in-one utility called netstat. Well, that is a lot of tasks. Hopefully that's given you a lot of ideas of things you need to know. And I think this would be a good one to break down. Netstat, path ping, traceRT, nslookup ping is only a small portion of the total command lines you need to know for the CompTIA Core 2 exam. Make sure you look at those official exam objectives and that you know every single one of those command prompts and what they do. This is one where CompTIA tends to ask broad questions like this so that you can really start to get an understanding of how you would decide which command to put into that prompt. Notice it didn't ask you about specifics of the ping command or the traceRT command or the netstat command. CompTIA generally is more interested in finding out if you know when to use certain utilities, and this is the type of question that can lead you down that road. That is the performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were able to get through that one okay. Why don't we shift gears back to multiple choice questions and see how you do with this next one that asks, an attacker is attempting to guess a hospital administrator's password by trying a list of medical terms. Which of the following would best describe this type of attack? Would this be a dictionary attack, brute force attack, insider threat, phishing, or zero-day attack? If you think you know the answer right here in this link on the screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. Instead, use that link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. That is exactly where you want to go to answer this question. This is another, it's more of a security question, but certainly a question from the Core 2 exam. And understanding what an attack looks like and providing some type of context to that is an important part of this exam. This is something you also see in Network Plus. You also see this in Security Plus. But as we always say, security is everyone's responsibility, not just the security team, but everybody in IT. And of course, every user in every department of the organization is also responsible for security. So we have to make sure that everybody's working together to keep things safe and secure on your network. This is certainly a challenge because this is one where you have to stop things at a number of different layers. But what's happening here? What would we call this? What does this happen to be? So we'll have to figure out if you know the answer to this one. If you think you do, lock it in. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you think you know which one this would be. A lot of you have already got your answers locked in, so let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, an attacker is attempting to guess a hospital administrator's password by trying a list of medical terms. Pretty good idea, Mr. Attacker. Which of the following would best describe this type of attack? Is that a dictionary attack, brute force attack, insider threat, phishing, or zero-day attack? Let's find out what you chose. And then we can see that a large number of you believe it is a dictionary attack. 73% of you chose that one, but 22% of you chose brute force attack for this. This is also single digits for everything else. 5% said phishing, 0% said insider threat, 0% said zero-day attack. Well, if we went with the plurality of you, really the majority of you in this particular case, 73%, that's a clear majority. I think we're well over 50% at that point. That is indeed the answer we were looking for, was a dictionary attack. But I'll tell you, the brute force attack, folks, were close. Well, why wasn't that one the right answer? Let's find out first about the dictionary attack. The attack is very much as it sounds. What if you took a dictionary and you used words from a dictionary to try to find someone's password? That is a very common thing because as humans, we tend to think in these words that we know. So if you're English speaking, there's a number of English speaking words that are very common to show up in passwords. If your password has the word ninja in it, if it has football in it, those are very common words to find in passwords for at least passwords in North America. So this is one of those cases where what if the person who we're trying to attack is in a very specific segment where they use words that you don't use anywhere else? If it's a hospital administrator, and I'm speaking as someone married to a nurse, there's a lot of words they use that I don't understand, like take out the garbage and fix the disposal. I don't know what they mean by that. In this case, we're really talking about medical words. Same thing occurs. What if the attacker was going across and trying to get access to something like a legal department? It's a lawyer's computer. Well, they're going to try a lot of legal terms to be able to find that particular password because people tend to use words they know as part of their password. So a good example is a dictionary attack using those, and not just the words themselves. They'll mix up some of these terms so that password, for example, would have an ampersand instead of an A. So they'll try a lot of these in the dictionary. They're not just a single word with those letters inside of it. They'll mix up some of the words. So instead of a T, there'll be a 7. Instead of an I, there'll be an L or a 1. So they'll try a lot of different ones, and they'll try a lot of different processes to do this. When you're going through a dictionary attack like this, this is one where you're really looking for a specialized password in that scenario, but you could, of course, run across something else. But when we're talking about a list of medical terms, that is clearly best describing a dictionary attack. Now, what's interesting about a dictionary attack is that a dictionary attack is a subset of a brute force attack. So effectively, it's a brute force attack using dictionary attack as the underlying method. So in this case, the question was very specifically written. Which of the following would best describe the type of attack? And for all of the options that we have here, although brute force attack does describe the attack, it does not best describe the attack. And a dictionary attack would be a better description of this particular attack. There was a question in the study group we did 2 days ago, in fact, where somebody was asking about questions like this, where they ask you which one of these would be the best thing to do, which one of these would be the first thing to do. And very often, and here's a good example of it, multiple answers in the question could potentially be something you can do, but they wouldn't be the best thing that you could do. In this particular case, there are 2 terms here that could describe this type of attack, but only one would best describe this type of attack. The question we got 2 days ago was, then how do you make that determination? And my response was, the correct answer should be very obvious to you, and it will be very obvious to you on the exam. This is an example of that. So you should be very aware of what a brute force attack is. You should be very aware of what a dictionary attack is, and you should know the differences between those so that it should be very clear and very obvious in this particular case that dictionary attack was the answer that we were looking for, and indeed, that is exactly what we wanted. Well, that didn't show you the answer to those at all, did it? It showed you the dictionary attack and nothing else. I would like to show you the actual answer for this one, though. I guess we could do that. We could show you what the answer is by clicking on the right thing there and showing you the answer was indeed 73% of you that said the answer was a dictionary attack. So it's one of those cases where you need to know your security topics on the Core 2 exam. There's an entire domain just on security, and every single one of these answers is from that section. We now know why it isn't brute force attack. Also would not be phishing in this case. The attacker is not asking the user to disclose this information. They're not asking the user for their password. They're not presenting them with a login page that's fake. They're not calling them on the phone and saying, hi, we're from IT, what's your password? This is a case of them going outside the scope of the user and directly attacking that person's account, so it would not be phishing. There's nothing to fish for. They have no bait. They're not going to get any fishes. And 0% of you said insider threat. Good answer or good non-answer, because nothing about this question mentioned that the person performing the attack was on the inside of the network. And I would say if you were on the inside of the network, there are a lot of other much better ways to gain access to the administrator's account than simply doing a brute force, or in this case, dictionary attack. And a zero-day attack would be an attack taking advantage of a vulnerability that up to this point was not known and probably does not have a patch for it. Maybe you do have a patch for it at this point. Occasionally you'll see that as well. But a zero-day attack is a brand new vulnerability that we all just found out about. And in this case, there was nothing in the question that mentioned anything about a vulnerability. It didn't mention anything about us having to patch anything. There was no attacks, other types of attacks occurring. This was all about trying to find a password when you don't know the password. And indeed, the 73% of you that said dictionary attack got that one absolutely correct. Well done. As you can tell already, there are a lot of different topics on these exams. We have to pass both the Core 1 exam and the Core 2 exam. And when you try to put those together, you're dealing with hardware, you're dealing with operating systems. You have to know Linux and Windows and Mac OS. You have to know about security. There's cloud computing inside of this. There is information about AI is now included on the A+ exam. There's a lot that you have to know. And one of the things that, if you look through all of my videos, you'll notice both of these courses together, 137 videos. That's a lot of videos, over 19 hours of content, just to learn everything you need to know to earn your A+ certification. Now, I highly recommend you watch every single one of those videos. Of course I do. Not all of us have the time to do that, I recognize, but you still would like to be able to gather the details from these specific exams. And so for that, I have created a consolidated list of everything that's contained within every single video in all of my courses. This is part of my course notes. So for my 220-1202 course, the course notes include a table of contents, so you can see exactly what's included through all the domains of this. There's a summary and gives you information about the exam itself. And here is a breakdown, a video by video breakdown of all of the text that is in these videos, important images, important tables, important graphics, everything that you would need to be able to understand the content of that video is contained within these course notes. We have not only this digital version of the course notes, we also have physical versions of the course notes as well. And those are available. Of course, they're identical to each other. The physical is simply a printed version of this that we made from dead trees. Don't worry, we planted more trees, so we're fine with that. I live in a part of the world where we have a lot of trees, and we chop them down all the time to make you course notes, but we plant more trees there, so we can just keep making you more course notes as long as you need them. That's the beauty of trees. We can just, a renewable crop that we can just keep making more and more of them. The course notes themselves are designed to give you feedback and information about these videos. It obviously doesn't replace watching the videos. It doesn't replace going through and reading a good book or going through labs, but it does give you a very good summary of everything you need to know for this exam. A great place where all of this is in one single document at the final part of your study process. Maybe that's something that can help you, and if you think it is, you can go to professormesser.com/1202notes. We've got quite a bit to go through there, and you can get both the Core 1 and Core 2 notes at the same time, and if you do, get a little bit of a discount when you buy them together. It's a little bit of a bonus. It's all on the website. You can find out more, professormesser.com/1202notes. How about another question? Next one on our list is this question that asks, a user reports their laptop performance significantly degrades whenever the device is disconnected from the AC power outlet. What is the most probable cause for this performance issue? Is it virtual memory was automatically disabled, the CPU was throttling down, USB endpoints have powered down, the BIOS is clearing the CMOS cache, or the roaming profile is synchronizing? Which one of those would be the most probable cause for this performance issue? If you think you know the answer, please do not answer in the chat room. Instead, use the link on your screen. go to professormesser.com/QA and tell me what you think the right answer might be. If you're watching this in the replay, just think about what the right answer might be, because if you go over to professormesser.com/QA, nothing will be there. Unless you're watching this replay while I am doing a different live stream. That would be a very complicated and difficult thing to follow. This is one where obviously you can only interact with these when we are doing something live. So you should be here when we do things live. We always keep a calendar on our website. Go to professormesser.com/calendar and you'll know exactly when the next live event is going to be. Lock in your answers at any time. See what you think the right answer is for this performance issue. Always wonder with some of these questions, always watch how many answers are coming in, how quickly they're coming in. And I can, of course, look to see behind the scenes. This will tell me what people are answering. I don't want to look at that, though. If I looked at it, you'd see me looking at it because it's sort of behind the screen that you see on your monitor right now. But I don't want to look quite yet, so it's a surprise to all of us. It's one of the few times I like surprises. Do any of us really like surprises? I guess we could. There might be an option there. We'll have to see as we go through all of this. Let's see how you did with this question. We asked, a user reports their laptop performance significantly degrades whenever the device is disconnected from the AC power outlet. What is the most probable cause for this performance issue? Is it virtual memory was automatically disabled? The CPU was throttling down? USB endpoints have powered down? The BIOS is clearing the CMOS cache? Or the roaming profile is synchronizing? Which one of these would it be? Well, let's see what you chose. We'll close our poll, and we can see a large number of you, 79%, say the CPU was throttling down. And then we have just single digits for everything else. That was by far the most popular answer. 8% of you say that the virtual memory was automatically disabled. 6% say the roaming profile is synchronizing. I see you, Active Directory people. 4% of you say the BIOS is clearing the CMOS cache. Not a thing, just made it up. And 2% of you say the USB endpoints have powered down. That is actually a thing. So the thing that is not a thing is actually got more votes than the thing that is a thing. How about that for an explanation? That's what I do for a living, people. That's where I bring this to you. So what would the answer be? 79% is a pretty big number. And in fact, 79% is absolutely correct. The CPU is the problem here. It's throttling down. It is not going as quickly as it did when we were powered on. Well, it does that for a number of reasons. But whenever you want to know what's going on with performance, one of the first places you should go, at least in Windows, is the Task Manager. This will show you what type of utilization you're getting across all of your different applications. You even have that other tab. I don't think I show it on here, but you have the Performance tab that will give you information about the CPU and give you some insight as to what might be going on. Look, just like that. I clicked on it, and there we are in the Performance tab. And the CPU is telling me what the speed is being reported as. And you even should be able to plug into power and see that number go up, unplug from power and see that number go down. The system is literally intentionally slowing you down, making things go slower. There's a couple of reasons for that. And of course, there's a lot of reasons for degrading, but the one that is probably the most obvious answer here is that there's a power saving mode built into most battery powered devices where they will not run at full steam. They will not run as fast as they possibly can when they are not directly connected to power in the hopes that they can save you a little bit of battery time. So it's a trade-off, of course. You're not connected to any power. You're not tethered. You can go anywhere you'd like with that mobile device, but it also is not going to perform the way you would normally find if you were plugged into a power connection. It is literally slowing down the CPU and making it all a little bit slower, which helps with not just battery performance because you're not using so much power to be able to perform the functions for this laptop. It also keeps things cooler because you are also not performing at the highest rated amount. So things don't get as hot. Therefore, we don't run the fans as much. Therefore, we don't use so much battery. So all of these things work together to make that happen. And if you're having degraded performance, whatever it happens to be, it could be a number of different items in here that could be causing that problem. But the one in this particular case where we are going fast when we're plugged in and not fast when we disconnect, the CPU is absolutely throttling down on that one. 6% of you said the roaming, or 8% of you, let's go start with that one, say the virtual memory was automatically disabled. Virtual memory is a section of your storage drive that has been set aside so that applications can be swapped out of physical memory and saved temporarily to your storage drive. And that frees up more space for you. That works great. But virtual memory does not automatically disable itself. It's something that's always running. Once you set it, it's running. If you've disabled it completely, then it doesn't work at all, whether you're plugged in or not plugged in. But when you disconnect from power, it's not going to disable your virtual memory. If anything, that's going to speed things up for you, so it's not going to automatically disable those. 6% of you say the roaming profile is synchronizing. This is 6% of the people that answered this are Active Directory administrators that still have PTSD over roaming profiles, and for a very good reason. They can be problematic. They are a little idiosyncratic. You have to make sure everything is engineered and set up properly to support them. But when they are working great. When they are not working, boy, they are not working great. That's quite a challenge, troubleshooting challenge. So I see the 6% of you, which immediately think, oh, that's Active Directory for sure. That's your roaming profile. It's having a problem. But it's not in this case. That is not when we unplug from power, it doesn't somehow synchronize your roaming profile. If you are logging in for the first time, when you are not directly connected, when you are somewhere else on somebody else's computer, you've moved from your machine, you're now logging in on a different machine, it will move your profile to that machine, but it does that during the login process, not when you disconnect from power. We have 4% of you said the BIOS is clearing the CMOS cache. All of this is nonsense words, other than the BIOS is a real thing, the CMOS is a real thing, but there is not a CMOS cache that the BIOS would somehow need to clear. And it certainly doesn't do that when you unplug from power. I'm not sure why you would do that when you unplug from power, even if it was a thing. But it simply made that one up, using words that seem like they would be correct, but a completely made up process. There is no CMOS cache in which the BIOS would clear. Therefore, it would not be the one that 4% of you chose. And 2% of you said USB endpoints have powered down. That is a real thing. There are such things as USB endpoints inside of your Windows software. Those are a connection to the USB devices that are made in the software of Windows itself. There's no real power associated with a Windows endpoint. The power is something associated with the USB device itself. So even that is sort of questionable in its language, in the terms that I used here. But nothing changes with your USB endpoints if you are plugged in or if you are unplugged. And certainly would not be slowing down your system. If anything, maybe suddenly a USB connected device would not be accessible. That's certainly possible, but that would not slow down your computer. That's a different problem with a different set of issues, and we can certainly look at that. If we wanted to find a laptop performance that is degrading whenever the device is disconnected from the AC power outlet, then most likely it is the CPU was throttling down. That is the answer we were looking for. That's the one that's causing this particular issue, and that's the one that 79% of you chose. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that I digitally sign that certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you can earn that CEU is to follow these instructions. If you do not follow these instructions, you do not get a CEU. See how easy this is? This is simple. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a link on my page that says Contact Us, which is really Contact Me. Go to that Contact Us link. This sends me a message directly. It brings up a form. Please put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put September 2026 Core 2. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, CPU throttling down. CPU throttling down. Those are the super secret code words of the month. And then you can, of course, send those to me. You can put anything else you would like into that message as well. I do read through every single one of these. But that's all you have to do. If you don't want to put anything else in the message, you don't have to. Just hit the submit button. That email comes to me, and then it takes me about a week to turn these around. And then I will send you back an email that has in it a digital signature that certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. That process again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put September 2026 Core 2. In the body of the message, put the super secret code words of the month, CPU throttling down. And if you do that, you'll be locked in for that 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. We still have time for a couple more questions, right? We could do a couple more. Let's do a couple more. Next question on our list is this one. A software developer at a startup wants to modify the underlying code of a database utility to optimize it for their proprietary hardware. What type of software classification allows the developer to view and change this source code? Would it be 64-bit, FOSS, DRM, EULA, or MNDA? Got a few choices to go from this list of things. The question again asks, a software developer at a startup wants to modify the underlying code of a database utility to optimize it for their proprietary hardware. What type of software classification allows the developer to view and change the source code? Would that be 64-bit, FOSS, DRM, EULA, or MNDA? Do you think you know the answer? Please do not answer in the chat room. Instead, you want to head over to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what it would be. Maybe you do know what it would be. Maybe you've already locked it in. Maybe you've got this one down cold, but certainly understanding the processes and procedures that take place and how those occur are certainly an important part of any IT department. And on the CompTIA Core 2 A+ exam, this is something you should know as well. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA to see if you know what would allow them to view and change the source code. Might be pretty good to know. And indeed, it's not something we deal with a lot in the world of IT. We're not application developers. We don't do any programming in the world of IT. That's over on the computer science side, thankfully. We can write some scripts. We can do some automation, and we're very good at that. But we do not create applications. We do not modify database utilities and optimize it for proprietary hardware. But how can we facilitate that? And what is going on with those? We'll have to see how we do with this question. Let's see how you did with this question. The question again asks, a software developer at a startup wants to modify the underlying code of a database utility to optimize it for their proprietary hardware. What type of software classification allows the developer to view and change this source code? Is it 64-bit, FOSS, DRM, EULA, or MNDA? Which one would it be? Well, let's see what you chose first. We will close our poll, and we can see that 57% of you believe the answer is FOSS. We also have 20%, a good number of you, say the answer is DRM is what allows that. 14% say the answer is EULA is what provides that functionality. 7% said MNDA. Which one is that? We'll find out in a moment. And 2% say 64-bit. It's kind of unusual to even have access to source code. If you're a Windows user, you don't have access to the Windows source code. You can't modify the way the desktop works. You can't modify the way that the task manager operates. You just have an executable that's already been compiled. They send you Windows, and that's it. You don't have any control over any of that proprietary software. But there is software out there that does allow you to view the actual source code of that software and might even allow you to make changes to that. We refer to that as free and open source software. That is the common category for this type of software. First, it's free. Yay. That's great. I like free. It doesn't have to be free. It could be open source without being free, but we commonly see these used together. Open source code means that we can read the source code and perhaps even modify it and then recompile it as our own. And there may be parts of the source code and the license associated with the source code that allows us to do that. Might even allow us to package it up as our own and resell it as our own. There's a lot of source code that does allow that. You have to look at the license to see if that's the case. Something like Windows doesn't allow this. We refer to that as closed source or commercial software, where all they gives you an executable. You have no idea what's inside that executable. You don't know what the code is for that. This is one of the things from a security perspective that we always worry about. One of the most important characteristics, the most important pieces of IT security is trust. So when a new version of software comes along and we have to install that new version or install software for the first time, we are trusting that that executable has been created in a way that will keep that software safe. With closed source, you can't view the source code. With open source, you absolutely can view the source code. And one of the other terms from this question that does not quite apply to the answer is the EULA, the End User Licensing Agreement. That's the thing you always scroll through without reading and you click I agree at the bottom, even though you have no idea what's inside of it. That's the EULA. And that is a very important licensing document that you are agreeing to. That's effectively a contract between you and the software manufacturer that you agree to these terms when you are using this software. Something that is included with every piece of software you would ever use. And in many large environments, when companies are buying software, before they commit to the software, they almost always ask to read through the end user license agreement. And I've been involved in many of these where then there is a discussion between the lawyers where the lawyer for the customer might want to have the EULA changed. They take it back to the company, then they decide whether they can change the EULA for that customer. Usually they can. They make the change, send it over, and then the customer agrees to purchase that software. So we just sort of at home, we don't even have that leverage. We just either agree or don't agree. If you're in a corporate environment, you might have a little bit of pull and things you can change as part of that end user license agreement. But in this case, the particular developer wanted to modify source code, and the free and open source software is the way that you would make that work. That is exactly the answer that we were looking for, and that's the one that 57% of you chose. 20% of you said a digital rights management is what allows the change of the open source, of the source code of that application. With DRM, it's actually the reverse. With DRM, this is usually the software company that is making a digital rights management restriction to the software that limits what you are able to do with that software. So for instance, digital rights management may say that this software is licensed to run on this machine. And if you took that software to another machine, it wouldn't work, wouldn't even start up because you're only licensed to run it on this machine. Sometimes DRM includes software keys, sometimes it includes hardware keys, or maybe it's just something built into the software itself. But DRM would not allow you to make changes to that software. That's why that's why the software company has invested in digital rights management to explicitly prevent that type of change. We have 14% that said EULA. I think now we understand why the end user license agreement has nothing to do with whether the software is open source or closed source. It's just for all software. And whether you are using open source or closed source software, there is most likely a EULA associated with that. 7% of you said a mutual non-disclosure agreement, or MNDA. That is a non-disclosure agreement that is signed by both or more, every party that's involved in that particular conversation anyway. Mutual non-disclosure agreements are very common, but they have nothing to do with a developer having access or the ability to change source code of an application. And 2% of you said 64-bit. That's the answer you decided would be the right one in this case. 64-bit generally describes a type of processing that is done on a system. We often refer to computers. That one's a 32-bit processor. That one is a 64-bit processor. That certainly describes how the internal workings of that device operate, but it has nothing to do with being able to edit or modify source code. So in this case would not be the 64-bit answer that really only 2% of you chose. In this case, it's what the majority of you chose. 57% of you said FOSS was the answer that we were looking for, and 57% of you would be absolutely correct. That is the answer that we wanted in this particular case. Well, hopefully that gives you an idea about what type of source code changes can be made and how those can be made. But we're now at the top of the hour, but I think we can squeeze in one more question, And this next question is going to come directly from my practice exams book. You've probably seen these with my Core 1 exam. We also have them for Core 2. This is my practice exams book, 380 pages, 3 90-question practice exams. Includes both multiple choice and performance-based questions inside of this practice exams book. And it has a lot of great questions with a detailed answer that I think might help you with your studies as well. Why don't we look at a question that comes directly from my practice exams and see how you do with this? This is a question. I don't have this in Vevox, so all you have to do is watch this one. Please, no answers in the chat room, as always. This is question A64, and it's a question from page 22 of my practice exams book. The question asks, a malware infection has recently been removed from a computer. When starting the operating system, Windows shows errors during the startup process, indicating some core operating system files are missing. Which one of the following should be used to restore these missing files? Would it be GP update, WinVer, SFC, or disk part? It's got to be one of those, right? You're working with them. And this is one where certainly understanding the command lines and Windows are really going to help you with this one, especially when you're looking at parts of an operating system and trying to understand what's going on, especially when you are working through recovering from malware. So one of these is really, really, really going to help you. Now, because you're in a PDF here, this is one of the beauties of having a PDF as your practice exam, you can annotate this. So you might want to mark things on the screen. If you have a stylus, you can, of course, be able to write on your PDF itself and save it. This PDF is not restricted, and you can save those annotations. When you load the PDF up next time, those annotations will be there. In fact, I have a lot of annotations in mine right here, and every time I pull it up, I just create more and more and more and more. You can, of course, go through the answers as well and determine what the answer might be that you think. You can mark it on the screen. You can highlight it. And when you're ready to look at an answer, you've got a couple of options. As I mentioned, we're on page 22, but it tells you if you just want a quick answer, whether it's A, B, C, or D, you would go to page 33. If you want a detailed overview of the answers, you go to page 102. Now, on a PDF, you would have to scroll 100 pages or so, 90 pages to get to page 102. It's a lot of scrolling. So in the PDF itself, I've created hot links on those different pieces of text. So quick answer, if you clicked on that, it would take you to page 33. If you click on the details, it'd take you to page 102. Let's click it, click, and it's going, if I take off the annotation, there we go, click, it takes me to page 102. So there is the answer page, the detailed answer page. I put the question at the top and, of course, the answers. And I tell you that the answer is C, SFC. And like a lot of other practice exams you will find, I give you an explanation on why the right answer is right. The problem I have with a lot of practice exams, especially on the internet, is a lot of them tell you why the right answer is right. But what if you don't get the right answer and you answered the wrong answer? There's an opportunity there to learn more about these topics. If you got an answer wrong, it's useful to know, why did I get that answer wrong so I don't make that mistake again? So in my practice exams book, every single incorrect answer is documented as to why it is incorrect. We're closing that learning loop, if you will, where we answered it wrong. It's a practice exam. Of course, you're going to answer certain questions wrong. It's part of the learning process. So what I tell you is when you get it wrong, here's the reset. Here's why you got it wrong, not just for that one answer, but all of the others. I'll also recommend that if you're someone who got the answer right, be sure to read through the incorrect answers so that you can really verify that your thought process was correct when finding the right answer. So you're almost getting 4 separate topics with every single sample question in this book, because every single one of the answers is a topic that comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. I'm not just giving you fake words or things that are out of scope for the exam. These are very specifically written to see if you know the topics that you will be faced with during an actual exam. That may be something to consider and think about as you go through understanding this. Now, what if you read the question and you didn't know anything that was in there? It looked like it was a different language that That does tend to happen. Well, at the bottom of this list is more information. In fact, you can even start with that. The information in this question is from the 220-1202 exam, Objective 1.5. Windows Command Line Tools is the video that this was pulled from. And if you'd like to watch that video, you can use your phone with the QR code, or you can type in or simply click the link to this video link here. It will pop up the video. You can watch the entire video, then come back to the question and see if you really got the detail of the topics now understood a little better, and you'll be able to understand the answers as they're presented to you. Once you're done with this question, you can go back to where you started by using the back button in your PDF reader. Just like you have in a browser, there's a back button in your PDF reader. I'm going to click my back button, click, and we're back to where we started. Again, with the annotation that we had when we were there. That's my practice exams book. That's something that might help you with your certification exams. If this is something that might interest you, you could have a look at my 1202 and my 1201 and 1202 together. And again, if you purchase them both at the same time, save a little bit of money. You can also bundle those with the course notes. We have them both in that digital PDF version, or I can just ship all of this out to you right now. And while you're waiting on this to be shipped to you, you get access to the PDFs for free, no additional cost. So you don't have to wait for this to arrive in the mail. You can start your studies immediately. And then once those arrive, you'll now have the physical. There's just too many books here. The physical edition, put those down there, put those over there for the moment. And that is something you might want to consider. Not only a great set of questions you can go through and some course notes that can help you remember what was in those videos, but something that also supports us as well. And we sure appreciate your support. Find out more about this, ProfessorMesser.com/core2PE, or use the main menus at the ProfessorMesser.com website. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A. Well, we're not done yet. Stick around for the after show. Instead of me asking you questions, it's time for you to ask me some questions about A+, CompTIA, certifications, IT, technology, or anything else that you would like to talk about. We do that coming up next. Don't go anywhere. I will remind you, we've said a number of times in the study group that what you'd like to do is get a set of the exam objectives. Those are available for free on the CompTIA website. No cost whatsoever. And they are probably one of the most critical documents you can get for this exam. This should be the first thing you read through before you start your studies. It should absolutely be the checklist you use before you book your exam. Here's what I mean by this. Here's a copy of the objectives. I'm going to flip through these and just give you a feel for Domain 1 has Section 1.1, explain common operating system types and their purposes. You need to know workstation systems, operating systems such as Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and Chrome OS. You need to know mobile operating systems such as iPad OS, iOS, and Android. You need to understand various file system types such as NTFS, REFS, FAT32, ext4, XFS, APFS, and exFAT. Also need to know vendor lifecycle limitations, end of life, and update limitations, and understand the compatibility concerns between operating systems. That's just one section of a very big Section 1, Domain 1, goes on for pages. Section 2, Domain 2, also very large. Look at all the bullets. More pages for Domain 2. Domain 3, single page for software troubleshooting. And then you have Section 4, operational procedures, which also goes on and on. Finally ends up at Section 4.10, explain basic concepts related to artificial intelligentsia. And then we have some acronyms that are in the back. Those are the practice exam, or the exam objectives we create everything from, our practice exams, our courses, and everything else. And those objectives are free for you to download from the CompTIA website. To make it a little easier, I put links directly to the objectives at ProfessorMesser.com/objectives. How easy is that? Certainly a great place to go. We do one of these study groups every month. Here in September, we're not done. We're just getting started with September. It's only the 3rd, which means next week on the 9th is our Network Plus study group. And a week from that day is our Security Plus study group. But if you're interested in knowing when the next A Plus study group is going to be, that'll be in October, on October the 6th and October the 8th. That is our current scheduled time for that. And of course, I have my October dates for the Network Plus and Security Plus on there as well, just in case you were interested in both of those. These dates are locked in to a point. Sometimes they do change. So if you want to know when the next live event is going to be and get the most updated information, it's on our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. That is the link that I update immediately if any of these dates happen to change. And I also update the calendar that is in Discord. There is an events group or a section of Discord. It's not really a chat room, but it's more of an events option inside of Discord that you can view. Both of those are the same. The calendar and Discord are all linked together, and I make sure I update both of those simultaneously. If there are any problems, that's where you should go if you want to know when the next live event is going to be. Well, speaking of live events, stick around for our after show coming up directly after this, where you submit questions to me. We'll just see how well I know the answers to some of these. Sometimes I do know the answers. Sometimes I don't. I have to ask you. We also have, of course, remind you, you have the course notes and practice exams on our website, professormesser.com/12026success, or use the main menus on our site to find those. Don't forget about the discounted vouchers and free exam hacks ebook at professormesser.com/vouchers. You can save a bundle on these vouchers. I mean, you could go to the CompTIA website and pay full price, but if you're in the U.S., Canada, or U.S. territory, why would you do that? To make that happen. Great place to go. And don't forget about everything that we are doing on the Discord, on the X, on the YouTube, on the Facebook, on the Instagram. Simply type in professormesser.com/Discord/X/YouTube/Instagram. No, I'm not going to have /the YouTube. We're not going to quite go that far with it. Just put the name there. You'll find it soon enough. I also have a list of the icons at the top of the Professor Messer website. If I had a browser up that could show me some of these things, I would show you that. But they are on the Professor Messer website. You can also find those at the very top of the website are all the social media links. So you're able to find us wherever we happen to be. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour. We're nowhere close to being done yet. You can find out more and watch more in our after show, and feel free to send me your questions at any time. It's the same link we've been using so far, professormesser.com/QA. Thank you so much for being here in this first hour. Stick around for the after show, and we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay, with that, I'm going to take a sip. One moment, please. There's somebody in the chat who was mentioning that they wanted to call an 800 number and purchase their books and training materials that way. And I do not support having an 800 number to do that. We prefer the much more secure online method for purchases. There's so much more we can do online. It protects your number. That way I don't have your credit card number. A lot of people don't realize when you are typing in a credit card on the internet, I have created and designed my site so I send you over to the company that manages the credit card process. So I don't process your credit cards on my site. In fact, I don't even know what your credit card number is, and I don't have access to your credit card number. That's by design. I do not want access to your credit card. Not only do I think that adds additional risk for you, because you don't know me, you don't know anybody who's on this side of the screen, but this is a situation where it is more secure for you to go through that process that way. And I don't have to go through a lot of PCI, DSS type of verifications on my site because I don't store any credit card numbers. So in a way, I like having a lot less risk, and hopefully you like having a lot less risk as well. So can't really call an 800 number to buy anything. So sorry. That is not going to work in this particular case. Maybe in the future, maybe someday it just becomes where you just have to make that happen. In the meantime, however, you can ask me any question that you would like. I don't know if I will answer any question, but you can always ask any question. We will do that for the second hour. You submit a question at any time using that link that we had before, professormesser.com/QA, and you can submit your questions to me. They go into a big queue on this side, And then I start sifting through the queue to see what questions you might have. We can, of course, go through all of this. Whenever you start going through at least IT, looking at technology in general, looking at things that are in the news, there is a lot to go through. So if there's questions you have about taking the exam, about what's on the exam, about IT in general, maybe we talk about that. Maybe we have a conversation about all of those. It should be something to look at. Let's start with a question that comes from Tom, who is right on the edge of taking the Core 2. Tom has even said, taking it tomorrow. Thanks for everything. What should I study for next? Which certification should I go to next time? He's already looking past A+. Tom is so secure in his Core 2 exam. He's like, well, we need to do something. We need to go through this list. Should we do Network Plus? Should we do Security Plus? What makes sense? What should I be doing? Now, if you look at CompTIA's website, they do have a structure and a path they can take you down. In fact, maybe I can find that. And this would be kind of a map of the different certifications that you can go through. CompTIA calls this their career roadmap. So if you just search for a career roadmap on the CompTIA website, you will find that. They've got a roadmap there with these people who are clearly real people that exist in the real world that can help you step through the roadmap information. And they kind of give you a feel for what certifications are there and what you can do with those. There's also some great charts. They have a career path planning tool that you can click on, and it will take you through sort of understanding what things make the most sense for you. Some people are interested in security. Some people are interested in databases. Other people want to do more cloud-based technologies. Some people want to do more AI. Well, there's a different path for each one of those. Not locked in stone. It's not that you have to do that path, but there's sort of a recommended grouping of certifications that might fit best for you and might fit best for prospective employers. And so they try to take you through all of this, a job report, industry outlook reports. You've got some breakdowns of individual careers. And of course, you can see how different certifications might fit into all of those. That's all on the CompTIA website. They try to not only tell you about the technical things you need to know, they also tell you a lot about some of the industry things that might be useful to you. And certainly from a job hunt perspective, those might be really, really useful. So have a look at that. See if that's something that may work for you. I think if you were trying to decide what is the next certification going to be for me, it's kind of a balancing act in many cases. You want to pick a technology that you're interested in. That makes perfect sense. That's probably a good bet because you're going to be working with these technologies all the time. Yeah, I would hate it if you went into Linux, you got a Linux certification. I tell everybody, go get your Linux certification, learn as much as you can about Linux. You should be a Linux administrator. And then you get into it and realize, oh, I hate Linux. I do not like Linux. That can happen. But that's one of the great things about IT is that you can kind of move one direction or another. Maybe if operating systems isn't for you, maybe networking would be more along your interest level. Maybe networking isn't for you. Maybe you want to work more in security. Maybe you want to do more cloud. Maybe you want to do more AI. You can learn more about those technologies and eventually have more expertise in those particular areas. So that balance of what you would like to do should be balanced with what employers would like you to be able to do. For example, in your area, if there are no employers looking for any AI help, learning as much as you can about AI doesn't really help you from a career perspective. You are more knowledgeable. You are more familiar with the AI world. You just don't have a job that can help you with AI. And I think a lot of people, probably the vast majority of people who are working on an IT certification, are working on it not just for their own personal knowledge, which is certainly important, but they're really working on this so that they can get a job or get a better job. And so you have to take that into account when you're balancing these things out. So look around at the jobs in your area. What are employers hiring for right now? Do they want a network professional? Are they looking for someone to do administrative work on operating systems? Do they want more of a security-minded folks? Are they looking for cloud-based technologists? Do they want somebody who is understanding some of the AI capabilities? Those are important areas to consider. So if you are looking for a job and you're interested in getting an IT certification, why not do both of that at the same time? Get a certification that people would like you to have, then use that as a credential when you send in your resume and sit for an interview with that particular company. It's a win-win in that particular scenario. Maybe that's the focus you should have. I think from the perspective of Network Plus and Security Plus, both of those are good. So I can't tell you for sure that either one is better than the other. For example, let me give you an example of this. Let's say that you work in Dallas, Texas, and there's a huge amount of networking opportunities there. Network Plus would make a lot of sense. But what if you live in Washington, D.C., where most of the jobs are related to the federal government? They don't want Network Plus. All of those jobs want you to have at a minimum Security Plus. In fact, they don't even care if you have Network Plus, but they absolutely require you to have Security Plus. Well, okay, in that case, I'm going to go get Security Plus. So sometimes it's not necessarily what you want or what the individual employer wants. Maybe it's your geographic area that makes that determination for you. That's why I can't make that decision for you. So have a look at what's out there. Have a look at where you live and what jobs are in your area and what employers are looking for, and put it all together. And I think you'll be able to put together a nice strategy for yourself that is more customized for what you would like to do and very customized for what employers would like you to do. Let's keep going through this list of questions. It's from Tony. Hey, Tony. Tony says, hey, there are countless abbreviations. How much do we need to memorize with all of that? What are ways the exam will test us on how well we know the abbreviations and their full terms? This is obviously something that's very clear when you're starting your studies into information technology, is we sure do acronyms a lot. If there are words stuck together, we will create a 3-letter acronym, a TLA, for that particular topic. There's always an acronym we have to know. And I guess there could be an argument. You could say that A+ has a lot of acronyms in it. It absolutely does. Network Plus has a ton of acronym. We're really acronym heavy on the networking side, for sure, no question. But we tend to have just as many on the security side as well. CompTIA through the years has always provided us with a list of those acronyms. And if we go back to the exam objectives, which is what we're doing right now, here's our exam objectives. I'm going to just flip over until we get to the end of the primary list of objectives. And then we get into the section that is clearly marked as the CompTIA A+ Core 2 220-1202 acronym list. And you can see it consists of an acronym and a definition. So for AAA, the definition is authentication, authorization, and accounting. That's really the only thing you could come up with AAA. There's no other AAA terms you could ever come up with for that, is there? Of course there is. But in the world of IT, that is certainly what we think of. AAA is authentication, authorization, and accounting. ACL is access control list. ADF is automatic document feeder. AES is advanced encryption standard. AMD is advanced micro devices. Me just sort of listing those out and saying what the definition is doesn't help you very much. In fact, I would highly recommend that you do not go through the process of simply flashcarding this and trying to memorize AES, advanced encryption standard, AP, access point, because that doesn't tell you anything about what these things do. Most of the time, sometimes you can almost figure it out. Automatic document feeder, that sounds like some type of feeder that works with documents in an automatic form. So you can sort of piece together what that is based on the name if you happen to know the name. So there is some advantage to doing it that way. Others, though, not so much. What if you get into ATX? ATX stands for Advanced Technology Extended. What is that? What is it? I don't even know what that is. Without any context, it's very difficult to understand what that even means. What is that referring to? Is it about storage drives? Is it about operating systems? Is it about encryption? Is it about networking? Well, it's about motherboards. but you wouldn't know that looking at the abbreviation and the definition. So that's probably the most important thing I can tell you about acronyms, is simply memorizing the letters and the name is not enough for this exam. And you should not do that. You need to understand, if you see ATX, what is ATX? Maybe you even know, oh, that stands for Advanced Technology Extended. I guess that's useful in some way, but you're probably not going to get a question on the exam that says, what do the letters ATX stand for? You're not going to get that question. They're just not going to show up on your exam. Instead, CompTIA will use the abbreviation or the acronym in some other question. Your organization is using a system that is based on ATX, and your customer wants to add a larger storage drive to the system. What are the things you need to keep in mind? And they'll list out a bunch of things, and some of these things will be specific to an ATX motherboard, for example. That is how CompTIA uses acronyms, is they use it in a way to hope that you understand not only what the acronym means, but how you would use it. So if you are doing flashcards and it has on one side ATX and on the other side it says Advanced Technology Extended, have additional text that says what ATX is and when you would use it and how this technology is implemented, because that's what CompTIA wants to know there. I would generally tell people, and I do generally tell people, I mean, there's pages of these, as you can see. I tell people, don't worry so much about this list. Instead, go back to the exam objectives that we have. And there's a lot of exam objectives here. In the exam objectives themselves, as you are going through the learning process, these abbreviations will pop right up. So the objective for facial recognition technology has an abbreviation, an acronym right next to it, FRT. FRT. Access control lists have ACLs right next to it. So you know there is an acronym associated with that particular one. Multi-factor authentication, MFA. And that is, of course, email, hardware token, authenticator application. Short message service is SMS, which you can't see because my big head's there, but it's there. See if I zoom in. There we go. Short message service. So a lot of the acronyms that you need to know are just embedded within the exam objectives. You are going to learn these organically as you go through the study materials. And I really think once you go through all of these study materials and you're learning about these as you go, and you learn that temporal key integrity protocol is TKIP and advanced encryption standard is AES, and remote authentication dial-in user service is Radius, when you see those, you'll just remember them now, because now you understand the context of all of these. And I really want to say that if the acronym is not explicitly listed in this bulleted list of exam objectives, you probably don't need to know it for your exam. That's not where I would spend my time. It's not a very good use of time to memorize acronyms. Instead, stick to the primary objectives. That's where you should go to know everything you need to know about those acronyms. And if it's not in that list, I just wouldn't bother. Now, if you got some time left over, you're thinking, well, let's just memorize them for fun. I guess you could do that. But I think you're going to memorize them anyway as you step through the exam objectives, and then you'll be fine with the topics and the details and the information that you want to know about any of those many and varied 3-letter and more acronyms. Some of them are big acronyms. They're more than just 3 letters. That is what I would recommend. So I think people sometimes get over fixated on, oh, here's something I can memorize. Let's go memorize it. I can put this on a flashcard and then I can memorize them. But in reality, it probably doesn't gain you very much. Stick to the primary, the main objectives, and I think you'll be fine. That is what I would recommend, Tony. So you can do that. Let's keep going in this list. Speaking of exam objectives, I don't want to call this person out, so I'm not going to post this one on the screen. But here's the question I got that said, I'm taking my Core 1 exam this weekend. I noticed some of the exam topics on your website, such as ZigGB, WMNs, and VR/AR headsets, are not covered in your YouTube course. Is there a particular reason for this? Thank you for all your help. Yes, those topics are not part of the exam objectives. Oh, there's the problem. Uh, so let's talk about these objectives and the context and how these objectives are used. And I'm going to bring up a couple of different things. I'm going to see if I can find this. These all come in live, of course. So you have me doing this live to be able to find the things I need. One moment. I've got some information I do want to share with you, and I want to bring up the right pieces of information for this. Those questions and topics that are listed there, things like ZigGB. Like you're probably wondering, what? ZigGB? What are you talking about? In fact, to be able to answer the question about ZigGB, I may have to go back quite a bit of time. I want to make a point with this, so I appreciate everyone bearing with me here as I do a couple of searches real quick to find the information that I am looking for. We're going to go back a couple of exam versions to the 220 1001. Now, this is an exam that was released 6 years ago, 5 years ago. And I don't have the specific dates here in front of me, but let's go back and look at, and instead of exam objectives for the 220 1001 exam, and in fact, in here has a very similar style and format to it. We have mobile devices, we have networking, we have hardware. In fact, it's a very similar layout, cloud computing and then troubleshooting, just like this is the Core 1 exam, by the way. But in this list, under compare and contrast wireless networking protocols, we have ZigBee, Z-Wave, 3G, that very popular 3G protocol. These are technologies that were on a version of this exam from many, 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 many years ago. And it's under section 2.4 wireless networking protocols. So that's the 1001 exam. Now let's bring up a different set of exam objectives for the 1101 exam. That would obviously be the 1201 exam, the most current version. So this is 2 versions later. I'm going to bring up these objectives so we can compare and contrast. And I'm going to go also back to the 1201 exam into the networking section, just so you can get a feel for this. Under networking and wireless, see if we even have a section for wireless networking in the 1201. We don't. No, we do. We absolutely do. So let's look at that same section in this newest exam, the 1201. It's section 2.2, explain wireless networking technologies. We have frequencies for 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz. We have channels, which have regulations, including channel selection, widths, frequencies, bands. We have Bluetooth, 802.11, NFC, and RFID. No ZigBee, no Z-Wave. None of those protocols and methods that were primarily associated with IoT devices. That's the reason they were in there. And at the time, 5-6 years ago, there was a bit of contention. There were different standards vying to be the winner of all standards. In some ways, Ethernet is a very good example of that on the networking side. When Ethernet became really popular, there were a lot of other networking types out there. There was Token Ring, there was ArcNet, there were proprietary types, there was AppleTalk, but Ethernet's the one that won. All of those had their advantages and disadvantages, but we all went with Ethernet. Similar scenario here. When IoT devices, we were starting to put video doorbells on our doors, and we were starting to put garage door openers, and we were starting to connect up our air conditioning systems to these IoT devices. You may have noticed that not all of the IoT devices really could talk well to each other. That's probably because some of them were using Z-Wave and others were using ZigBee. Those were 2 competing standards at the time. Well, that all kind of went away as one single set of standards arrived. But as it turns out, nobody really knew that was happening behind the scenes anyway. You as a technologist really can't see the ZigBee or Z-Wave communication unless you have very specialized hardware. And it's one of those where we don't tend to get into the details of how these are working at that bit and byte level for IoT devices. So therefore, we don't commonly need to worry about those. And so they remove them from the exam because it's not really part of our job function to troubleshoot a ZigBee connection. And so you no longer see those in the exam. So if you do see these pop up on a different course that I did, then you're seeing it on all of our older courses. And if you have to look at the page that you were looking at or the video you were looking at, it probably has in the title of that video 220-1001, not the 220-1201. And that really brings up an important thing to keep in mind is you really need to use materials that have been written for the latest version of the exam. This is a very good example. Why? Because I've seen the practice questions online. I've seen the ones asking you about deciding between ZigGB and Z-Wave. And I look at the question going, well, that's completely outdated. You're never going to get that topic on your exam because that topic does not exist on the 1201 exam objectives. That's how close CompTIA sticks to this list. If it's not in this list, you will not be asked about it on your exam. That's not entirely true because there are cases. Here's how CompTIA is kind of sneaky with that. There are cases where they might ask you a question that comes from a topic that is not in this list. But as they tell you at the beginning of your exam, in fact, I think they even have it in the exam objectives themselves, they kind of warn you about this. And they say that, that they may give you questions on your exam that aren't in this list. But what they're really saying is that we're giving you those questions to see if maybe you know it. We might be including that topic on a new exam series, and we're going to test it by making you the guinea pig. So when you're taking your exam, not only is it you trying to earn an industry certification, at the same time, there's a little market research going on CompTIA is doing for you. And you might get a question about a brand new technology that is not covered in any of these topics, and it might throw you a little bit, but don't let it. They're really just trying to see if you happen to know that technology. And what's probably good and kind of bad about this is they don't tend to grade those questions. So even if you know the answer, it probably isn't going to help you very much. But the good part is if you don't know the answer, it's not going to hurt you at all. So it's just them trying to figure out more information about you as they're going through it. So if you ever are running to a topic that is not in this list of exam objectives, then you do not need to know it for the exam. And I would highly recommend that you just ignore anything that is trying to get you to go down that road because you do not need to know about any of those. So another important piece of information to keep in mind as you are studying for your exam is the old stuff. Don't bother with it. Throw it out. Don't use it. Check your books. Check all your study materials. Make sure they say 1201 and 1202. That's going to be pretty important as you go through all of this. And that's why you probably saw something that referenced to technology. It's not out here. And that's the reason it's not in my latest series of videos. It's not in my course. It's not in my course notes. It's not in my practice exams. There's no ZigGB reference in any of them. And that's why I go through every single course and I create brand new videos for every single course. Even though 70% of the course material might be the same, doesn't matter. I'm doing it over for a couple of reasons. One is I'm able to better hone it towards what the exam objectives are getting to. I think we have better production now than we did 20 years ago, no question. And I also think that it's a way to make videos more seamless. And in fact, it's easier to make them if I just reshoot them rather than trying to piece together 70% that's old and 30% that's new. It's not worth it. Sort of like fixing up a house that, well, we could just gut the interior and change the interior, or we could just raise the entire house and start from scratch. And by far, it's much cheaper to just plow the entire house down and start fresh. You get a better house and it's less expensive and it goes up faster. That's for me. That's effectively describes the production process for creating a video course right there. It's just like building a house. Same thing. Let's keep going through the exam questions that you have, the other topics you have for this. Boy, a lot of great questions in here, by the way. Let's keep going through these. The question here, let's focus on this. This is a very popular question, so I think it's a good one to describe. This is from Pete. Pete says, what's the best career path for work from home positions? Who doesn't want to work from home? I work from home. I think it's a great thing. Pretty flexible to be able to have that. And in fact, there are a lot of technology positions that are work from home. There's quite a few that are 100% work from home. These days, there are a number of positions where you can work from home for certain days of the week. Maybe you have to go into the office once a week, twice a week, whatever it happens to be. Different organizations do this in different ways. But even prior to COVID, there were a lot of different organizations that I worked with where I met with people at their home. I didn't meet with them directly, but over a Zoom, over a video conference, or I would go to their office and they would meet me there. And we would have our meeting there at their office. And in fact, it was one of those cases where they were trying to figure out, where did I leave this? I don't really have a desk here. I need to find somebody. Hand me that sheet of paper. It's sort of that kind of thing. Both of us were sort of walking into an odd environment because they don't work from the office either. They're all working from home. In fact, most of the time, this does happen, especially in technology, that if you have a particular knowledge, say you become an expert in high-speed routing, in large-scale high-speed routing, and maybe it's in a very specialty type of environment. Maybe you work for a wide area network provider or a telecommunications company. That they certainly have a niche in the high-speed routing area. Maybe you're working for a company that does stock pricing or even buying and selling of stocks. Well, you need high-speed routed networks to be able to do that. Now, how do you build those in a way that makes you more competitive? How do you build those to make things faster? How do you build things to make this more secure and more resilient? Those are the things you'll be doing if you have a very specific knowledge of that world. But when you get into that level of knowledge and I live in Central Florida. Let's say you live in Orlando and you want to do this for a living. Well, having a very large high-speed routed network usually is not all in one city. Usually you're connecting Orlando to Atlanta, Atlanta to Dallas, Dallas to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to LA. And there's a very large, in fact, maybe it's worldwide. This is the case if you were working in a telecommunications company, for example. You're supporting systems that are almost never in Orlando, except you live in Orlando. Why would you need to come into the office when all you're going to do is get on a call where you are working with people in other parts of the world? I can do that at home. And in fact, at that level, those technical people do that at home. And they do it all day. They get on the phone, they're on a bridge, they're on a conference call, they're on a video call, they're going through problems, they're troubleshooting issues, they're looking at fixing problems. They're probably a tier 3 or tier 4 person. That's the level of support they're providing. So there's a problem, you call into tier 1. If it's easy, tier 1 will take care of it. If tier 1 can't help you, it goes up to tier 2. Tier 2 looks at the problem. If that can't be fixed, they go up to tier 3. If tier 3 can't fix it, you got to go to tier 4. Not everybody has even a tier 4 to go to. But in cases like that, that's a very specialized bit of knowledge. They know those routers inside out. They know how they tick. They know how they work. They know how to configure them. They understand the protocols. They understand the topologies. They understand the mission. And they put all of it together. They plan it. They design it. They implement it. And they troubleshoot it. That's a very specialized bit of knowledge. And so they get a little bit more specialized bit of benefit so they can work from home. Generally speaking, you don't really see this with things like a help desk. Help desk people are sort of the starting point. That is tier 1. And the tier 1 people need to be in a room where everybody can learn from each other, where everybody can see what's going on, where you can touch the equipment you're talking about, where you can go to someone's desk and meet with them directly. You can see what's on their screen in the case of the same building, for example. But generally, the tools you need at a tier 1 and the level of benefit you get at tier 1, relatively limited and probably not work from home. So that's just something you need to be prepared for. A lot of people, I think, want to work from home straight away. Well, you sort of have to work into that. Those are very popular jobs, and you're just not going to be able to jump into one usually right at the beginning. Usually you have to build up a knowledge base. You have to build that foundation. You have to level up in the IT world to a particular level where your knowledge is so niche and so broad and so you're so knowledgeable about this topic that employers would love to have you work for them. And I'll let you work from home if you just come work for us. And they're glad to do it. That's the level we would all strive for. My last position, I sort of had that level of knowledge, but my job was to go meet with people at their locations. So mine was not a work from an office. Mine was sort of, I worked from your office. I visited multiple offices throughout the day as a systems engineer. So I would represent a firewall. I would bring it in and go, I got this great firewall. Let's plug it in and see what it does. And that's what we would do. That was effectively my job. But I had to take the firewall from place to place and go plug it in so that we could see what it did. So that when you're representing a product, you're part of that manufacturer side, which is what I was. Well, then of course you needed to go to the mountain, and that the mountain did not move. So you had to go see those people at their office and be able to do your tasks there. So I didn't work from home, but I also didn't work from an office. That was always interesting. Being able to add on travel to technical jobs is like two very difficult things. Being someone who you're constantly in a hotel, you're constantly on an airplane, but that was a great job. I had a lot of fun on that job. Met a lot of amazing people, worked with a lot of just ridiculously smart technologists, learned a lot on those types of jobs, and you probably will too, but you probably won't work from home right off. But there are certainly paths and positions for that. Networking is a good example of that. Security, a very good example of that. And as you get more knowledgeable really in any niche, there are a number of jobs out there you might want to look at. So even though you might not be ready for those jobs, go search for them. The job postings are out there and they say you will work from home, 24/7, all day, every day you're working from home. Maybe not 24/7. That'd be quite a job, wouldn't it? You never sleep. You just work from home to make that happen. The jobs are out there. And if you're working towards one, I know that the industry and I know the job market it moves under our feet a lot of times, but generally those very broad work from home type positions are always going to be there because it's a nice benefit. And companies use that to get the smart people working for them if they know what they're doing. And I think many of them do indeed know what they are doing. Let's do some more questions. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I want to squeeze in a couple more questions for you. This is a great one. This one, probably not going to, I don't know if you'll be able to catch the answer on this one. Terry D says, with everything to know in IT, how do you keep yourself from getting overwhelmed? Oh, Terry D, why in the world do you not think I am overwhelmed right now? Being overwhelmed is the default state in information technology. That is what we do. We are constantly overwhelmed. One of the things I think people misunderstand about IT, and maybe rightfully so, is that they look at someone who is a technologist and say, well, they know everything about everything. Here's our genius. We finally got the smart guy showed up. Smart people are here to fix our problem. They know everything there is to know about fixing this issue. That statement itself could not be farther from the truth. If anything, as someone who works in IT, you don't know a lot more things than what you do know. A lot more things. There will never be a time working in your job where you know everything there is to know. Never. There will never be a time when you know everything there is to know. In fact, I would argue if you're in a position in technology and you know 80% of what you need to know, you're in the wrong job. You should not know that much. You shouldn't. You could be making a lot more money somewhere else because you know a lot more. You need to be constantly not knowing. You need to be constantly ignorant of your job. I don't mean it exactly like that, but there is something to this. If you think about someone who is working, let's take the last job I was in. I represented a next generation firewall. I was the systems engineer who was representing this company and this next gen firewall. Now, if you've ever worked with next gen firewalls, they are remarkably complex devices with a billion different features, interoperability concerns. There are technical things you need to know. You need to not only understand the operation of the device, you also have to understand how this would be implemented into a normal enterprise environment. You have to understand routing protocols. You have to understand switching technologies. You have to understand how to integrate with Active Directory and other similar systems. You have to know how you would enable virtual private networking and encryption and SSL decryption and IPsec and authentication, and how do you keep it secure and what do you do with the logs? There's a lot to know with these next-gen firewalls. And as a systems engineer for that company, you have to know all of those things. Well, I didn't know all those things. No systems engineer for any company knows all the things. And if you are in a meeting with someone and you're talking to them about OSPF and the OSPF implementation that we have, we integrate OSPF into the layer 3 capabilities. If you've configured an interface for layer 3, you can also enable dynamic routing using OSPF on that interface. And the customer asks, can I do load balancing? Does the OSPF implementation support load balancing? Immediately, I think, I don't know. I don't know. It's a question I haven't thought about it. Obviously, it's in the OSPF spec. I've seen it. I've seen other pieces of equipment perform that functionality as part of the OSPF specification. And they ask, well, does this product support that? Well, I don't know. And more often than not, when we get into that Q&A part of the process, at least one of their questions, I will not know. And we have to, in our industry, be a little more self-aware when it comes to questions like that. I think some people are concerned that if they say, I don't know, that it makes them look lesser than. Like they're not a good technologist because they don't know this one thing. And in reality, none of us know all of it. You can't possibly know every answer for every question that will be posed to you regarding that technology. So you become very comfortable in saying, I have no idea. I know what you're talking about. I've used that functionality. Here it is in the specification. Here's what they call it. Here's what we are looking for. Let me contact my product manager. Let me talk. I've got a systems engineer in LA who's my OSPF expert. Let me send them some information. I'll get the answer for you and I'll send you an email with the details of that. We'll go over it tomorrow. They go, okay, that's good. Now, what about these other things? And we go to the next topic. So I usually leave the meeting with a bunch of to-dos, with things that I have to get answered. And then I go get them answered and bring them back as part of the job that you do. Now, a lot of the questions I knew. They have a question about what authentication type is used for the VPN implementation. How do we configure port-based scanning for this rather than application-based scanning? How many of these can I put together in a high availability configuration? How are they connected in that mode? Can I use that with layer 2? These are questions. Yeah, I got it. I know the answer to those. We can answer those relatively quickly, but you will always get questions you don't know. You do not know. So that could overwhelm a person. That could, for many people, be disconcerting or might make them feel like they're not good at what they are doing. But that's not true at all, because there's no way you're going to know everything. What you should get very good at doing, and this is sort of a skill, is saying, I don't know, and owning it. Of course you don't know. There's no way you would know everything. I got to a point where I would sit whenever there's training class, and the way that works with these large organizations, if you work for a Cisco or a Palo Alto Networks or one of these large technology companies, and you're a systems engineer, they send you to training at least twice a year, sometimes more than that, and twice a year for a week. So you all fly out to a city. They put you in Cleveland at the Marriott, and you're all staying at the Marriott. And then down in the ballrooms every day, they have meetings that you sit through. The management of the company comes in. They say things about the company in general. They give you an idea about future direction. Product managers come in. They talk about what's coming up in the latest products. They talk about how the company is doing. They might do a funny skit or a skit that they think is funny, which is always not funny, but you always laugh. And that is your corporate event. And then you have these breakout sessions where you go do training. So for a week, at least half a day every day, you're in technical training. And they're teaching you about these things maybe you don't know about. And that's a great place to learn. And you take that knowledge and you take it back with you for the next 6 months, and then you learn more 6 months from then. Sometimes they will supplement it with dailies, maybe a one-day training over the next quarter, something like that. And when you start going through that training process and learning that as you learn more about the product, as you learn more about these technologies, you really do understand how much you do not know. It's sort of a trite phrase that more you know, the more you don't know, but it is real, at least in the world of technology. But what I would end up doing is sitting in the front of those training rooms, and when somebody was going through some new technology that was just coming out, here's our new feature on the thing, and we go to step 1 and step 2 and step 3 and step 4. I would, hold on, wait a second. Can you back up from step 3? How did we get from step 2 to step 3? I don't see the link. I am not finding the connection. I go, oh, well, it's right here behind the scenes. If you were to open this up, you would see this and this is it. And that's how we get from step 2 to step 3. I go, oh, okay, got it. So I'm in the front of the class, always interrupting things because I don't know. Now, what I found, of course, is that after the class was over, people would inevitably come up to me and say, oh, I'm so glad you asked about the step 2, step 3 thing. I did not know what he was talking about. I didn't understand the link, but now we got it. Why didn't you say anything? Well, I don't want to seem like I'm stupid. I don't want to seem like I don't know. Oh, I'm well past that. I do not care what people think. I don't know. So you need to tell me, because once this week is over, I'm leaving and I'm going back and talking to my customers. I need to know this. So for me, it was more about understanding what I would be faced with a week from now. I didn't care what the people in the room thought of me. And I think if we do more of that as technologists, that we're not being that all-important technology person who uses their knowledge to push people around, and instead is a little more humble about what you don't know, because by the way, you don't. I think that we would be not only better technologists, might be a little bit better people by doing that. I don't know if that's really true, but I suspect it might be a little bit better on all of us if we could just come to grips with what we don't know and own it and just be that person so that we can all learn something. We will all get to a point where we know these things, but it takes time. Sometimes we're going different directions and you're never going to know everything. I still don't know everything there is to know about OSPF. I don't know that anyone does. Maybe there's 2 people in the world that do. OSPF, incredibly complex. Just reading the RFC, it's big. There's a lot to know about that. But the more you work with that technology, the more familiar you would be with the nuances of how that technology works. But maybe my focus is not OSPF. Maybe my focus is more on the switching side. So if I have a switching question, I got you. But if I have an OSPF question, I'm going to go with my OSPF person. And sometimes that's the way we do it. We have these people in the organization that are very knowledgeable on specific topics. And those key knowledge people, you have a list. In companies like I worked for, you have a list of those folks. Oh, do you have OSPF question? Call this person. Oh, do you have a question about working with this third-party integration? Call this person. They've done 2 of them. And sometimes we learn it as we go. And the person who did it becomes the expert. In fact, that's usually how it works. If you're the person tasked with the project to clean up the way that we're dealing with this cloud-based integration, and you work hard on that project and you clean up the cloud-based integration, you automate it, you add some additional orchestration, you build in some reports, guess what? You're now the expert. That's how it works. There's nobody that comes down from above and anoints you the expert of that technology. You just sort of become it. You just sort of are the expert in how this works, just because you spent time with it. And for new technologies that are just emerging, and you work a lot with these technologies, it's amazing now because you're all starting from the same point. Nobody knew this technology a year ago. Now everybody needs to know this technology. You can't say that you're already familiar with it. It's brand new. So it's another case where not knowing something would work pretty well with that. So that's my recommendation to you is don't worry about being overwhelmed. That's your normal state. That's where you live. You should roll around in your ignorance. You should be happy that you don't know everything yet. It's still fun. And you're never going to know everything. So another thing to think about. Use those connections you have, use the knowledge that other people have that you can help work together. You bring all that together, the synergy is beautiful when it happens. So just another thing to think about. Pick whatever you like, become an expert in that thing. That's it. That's how it works. Find your niche, become the expert in that niche. Step 3, profit. That's what you can do. Let's keep going. I know we're past the top of the hour, but maybe we can get one more into this mix. I would like to maybe find one more that we have in this side. Quite a bit to work through. I don't want to, this is another one there. I've got a couple of questions like this, so I'm not going to put a single question out there, but it's specific around automation. They're getting a lot of questions about automation. And it makes sense. We're in this world of AI. I don't know that we've really figured out what that is quite yet. I don't think the AI companies have really figured that part out yet, but they're figuring out something. We're just watching the craziness go on. The way that this industry moves, this is sort of the normal way we do things. There's a little shaking going on right now, and eventually everything will shake out. In the meantime, though, there are places where we can optimize our use of these new technologies with some things that we already know. And as I've often said, automation is a big part of this. Now, especially, automation is a huge part of this. I think some people see AI integrated into automation in some ways, and I guess in some ways it is. But traditional automation is still incredibly important, incredibly valuable, and it's a set of skills you should be familiar with. And so I tell people all the time, if you work in a very Windows-centric environment, you need to know everything you can about PowerShell. Go learn PowerShell. Understand the way it works. Understand the way it scripts. Understand its capabilities. Understand what you can add to it to extend its capabilities. PowerShell is an incredibly useful management tool and automation tool in a very Windows-centric environment. So learn everything you can. If you are working in an environment with a lot of different types of operating systems, maybe working with Linux, well, there's not really a good PowerShell option for Linux. Linux just sort of has its automation built in. But on the Linux side, maybe we're focusing more on something like Python. Python is a scripting language that you can use across many different operating systems. It works on Windows, it works on Linux, it works on Mac OS. That makes it a very attractive automation. In fact, that is I would say the primary scripting language we use for most cloud-based implementations. So if you're trying to orchestrate the cloud, you're probably orchestrating it at some degree, probably a major degree, with the Python scripting language. So that would be a great place to start as well. So whether you're learning about PowerShell, whether you're learning about Python, both are really great skills to know. So if number of the questions that we got in this week were about working with AI, working with automation, what should I do to make myself more attractive to a prospective employer? What type of skills would they like to see? Automation is a big skill that they would love to see, especially now. It is on the tips of their tongues and correlates mostly with the AI side, but having someone who can really make Python dance, having somebody that can look at a PowerShell script and know exactly what's going on, that is a valuable skill. And it's one that you can apply, I would argue, probably for the rest of your career. Even if Python falls out of interest over the next 6 months, something is going to be automating. And once you learn how to automate in one language, you can effectively automate in any language. You just adjust the syntax to work accordingly. It's really more about handling logic than it is about a specific language. And once you understand the logic of a script and how you can manipulate that logic, I think you'd be in very good shape. You'd be able to use those skills wherever you go. You'll be able to make more money wherever you happen to go because you have those skills. Wouldn't it be great to have that update? Maybe you have to update 100 switches with the new operating system. What if you just built a script that did that? You're not sitting there manually clicking a button on 100 different switches. Why would you do that? You need to create a script that goes out to the switch, performs this process, downloads, makes a backup of the current configuration, downloads the current code, uploads the current one, modifies the config, restarts the system, and does it 100 times. And you don't have to do anything. You're sleeping. You don't have to worry about what's going on there. Maybe it does a few every day. Maybe you set up the script to go out every day and just do it randomly. That's completely up to you. But having that capability, having that skill set in your pocket, and you can show an employer, I'm valuable, and here's how I can be even more valuable to you, is using PowerShell and using Python. So if you just wanted to pick a couple new things to learn today, there's your topics. That's exactly what you should go off and learn. Everybody needs to know it. Everybody would improve their position within an organization. You improve your possibility of getting a job, and you've got some skills you can use now for the rest of your career. Absolutely learn PowerShell, absolutely learn Python, learn shell scripting, learn batch files. It all extends from there. You can really start to understand how to put all of this together. What about automating that? Do cron jobs in Linux, understand the way to schedule jobs in Windows. How can we configure that in an automated way? How can we integrate that with Active Directory? All of these things are valuable, and you need to understand how they work. That's where I would recommend you start. Go learn as much as you can about PowerShell. Go learn as much as you can about Python. And those would be great places to go. There's a lot of great YouTube courses and videos out there. You can go find them. I don't do anything specifically on PowerShell or specifically on Python. There's plenty of stuff, great books out there to go through. That's where I go when I have a question, when I'm building a script. I'm thinking, how could I do this differently? How can I bring this particular piece in? How can I manage these variables? How can I make a change to this? They're out there. They will guide you through that process. And I think that's where you should focus. It also makes for interesting conversations in the job hunt. So as you finally get that job interview, you sit down with the prospective employer and they talk to you about, tell us about a case where you ran into a problem and how you solved it. Well, let me tell you about something I just did with a Python script that I configured to automate a particular process. Here was my problem. Here's how I evaluated the different options to solve the problem. And here is how I implemented the solution. And here's a report I created from the script. Would you like to see it? You should always have something to show in an interview. If you've ever shown up to an interview with nothing to show, you're doing yourself a disservice. This is a show and tell. We call it a job interview, but it's a show and tell. So you have to bring something in. Bring in the report you created. Bring in the design, the network design of your home lab so that you can show them what you've done. Bring in a report you created from the firewall that you put in your home lab. Show how many attacks have come into your network over the last 24 hours and what they were. Show the increase in attacks when a particular 0 day hits. Whatever it is, have something to show. This should not be you talking. Well, I've done stuff on a firewall. Wish I had a report to show you. It'd be really good. That's where you should focus. It really needs to be you highlighting what you know. Reports are great. Diagrams are fantastic. Have something on paper. Paper. Do I have a piece of paper here? I don't. Paper is these physical fibrous type white sheets that we used to write on, and we could show them to people. You should find some of that and create some reports that you could physically hand to someone. That leaves something with them. Don't make it a URL. Don't make, I'll just visit my website at www.ineedajob.com. You need to have a piece of paper that you leave with them. They take back to their desk. And when they are going through the process of trying to decide which one of these folks makes the short list, you now have a report sitting next to your resume that highlights your knowledge. So always have a report, always have a story. There should be a number of stories that you should have about technology and the things that you've done in your home lab or the implementations you've done or a network design that went bad. Have some type of story, and it should have an arc. It should have a beginning. There should be a middle, and there should be an end. Here was my problem. Here's how I attacked it. Here's how I resolved it. You should have at least 3 of those when you walk into the interview room. If you don't have 3, find 3 right now. Think about things you've done. Think about implementations you've done. Think about troubleshooting you've done. Not just the ones that went right, but think about the things that went wrong. Well, I opened this up to do this, and here's a problem we ran into, and I had to resolve that, and here's how I resolved it. Have those. There's the interview skill part of this is something I think we probably don't spend enough time on, but there are things you can do in the interview room to position you above and beyond everybody else who's walking in the door. And you need to think about what those strategies are, because there are ways that you can do it very simply as part of the overall interview process. And I think bringing in a report, bringing in a diagram, bringing in something that you can leave with the prospective employer can be very, very valuable in the long run. Well, speaking of a long run, we are well past our 2-hour mark on the live stream. That probably means that is where we're going to have to end for today. I know, it's so sad, isn't it? I have so much fun doing these with you. Thank you so much for joining me live. Everybody who's out there, thank you, chat room, for everything that you've done in these last 2 hours. We get great questions from you. Thank you for submitting questions for our after show. We do this on every one of our live streams. If this is something you've enjoyed, come on back next week. We, of course, have our Network Plus study group on Wednesday of next week. And if you want to know when the next live event is going to be, you can always come back and check out our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. Thank you so much for joining us for this live stream, and we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.